Hi, this is Jessica DeMassa in the Guidewell Insights Lounge. I'm here at Singularity University's Exponential Medicine, and I am joined by somebody from Singularity University. This is Robert Suarez. He is the Managing Director of Innovation and Design for the Singularity University Labs. Welcome, Robert. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about Singularity University Labs. What is that?
Our labs, our only mission in labs is to launch impact initiatives.
Okay, what does that mean?
We work with startups, we work with the largest corporations in the world, and dev orgs, which are people like UNICEF, Amnesty International, World Wildlife Fund. We believe that the overlap and the collaboration of those three entities can come together and launch big, important things for the world.
That's wonderful. So how are you guys doing this in healthcare? I know there's a lot of talk about how the pace of innovation and driving it into the system, the existing system. How is this working in healthcare for you?
Well, our partners in healthcare are some of the smartest and biggest companies.
Right.
And they realize that they need to do things a little differently, so we help them do that. We know how startups run. We've successfully launched and guide them all the time. So we're really stealing some of those methods from the startup and implementing them within the large organizations. That means get away from headquarters, innovate on the edge. The core business for these companies is going to be great. We're going to play on the edges. So we help them play on the edges, and we lay out a plan that is incredibly aggressive for large companies, but it's simple for startups.
Okay.
So we copy that over and we run them through the program.
So talk to me about some of those things that make that plan so aggressive. Like, what about it for a large company is a little bit difficult to handle?
It's funny. This will sound odd, but if you give them a little less resources, like for companies, we need a $2 million project, we work with the biggest consultants to do this big thing, that's slow. You give them a quarter of that or less and ask them to sprint, and they have to survive. In 12 weeks, we want to see something. A prototype. It doesn't have to look pretty, but it has to be something that we can get our hands around. So we found that the right people in those organizations love this. They've been waiting to do this.
Excellent. So you're bringing that startup mentality, driving it into those established organizations. That's wonderful. So how is that helping bring innovations to market faster, or bring innovation into the system faster? Is it helping accelerate the pace of adoption?
Well, literally, you will see, these large organizations will see some proof. There's something that provokes them to think differently. And if that alone works, then great. So you've affected the decision makers, and they're seeing new things coming out of their own company faster and more and even better than their traditional ways. So there's one thing, you're just influencing the mindset.
Sure.
And survival rate, if we can get a couple of those to move forward, and when I say move forward, it doesn't have to be that team to get more funding, right? We'll hand that off to a large part of the organization that's already doing something in this space. So they get a gift. Like, you're an innovation team with 200 people, this little edge team just gave you this wonderful prototype and a bit of a runway, and here's how you get this bigger and better, and hopefully then it grows in the organization, spreads across, and then we get to market at scale.
Excellent. And so talk to me a little bit about some advice that you could give, I guess, all of the players that are involved. So you mentioned those three key groups here. Right. So for a startup who's looking to get into the healthcare industry, what's your best advice?
This is especially with startups, they're very fast and very eager, but you need to be considerate and thoughtful about what you're designing, or you're going to quickly run down the wrong path.
Right.
So we work with our startups to discover the real opportunity space. This is classic design thinking. This is understanding behaviors of people. Also, the technology you're going to work with. You have to immerse yourself in that. And then look outside your world. For the best startups or large organizations, the things you want to do, you can't look to the competition because they're not doing it. And if they are, then you're late. So look to other industries, and where are people getting traction? Can I copy that?
Right.
So all that discovery phase, and then what I think is special for labs is about projecting. We help teams look further down the future, all right? We want this big impact. We want to see big change by 2030. And we're aligned with the UN sustainability goals. So we want to see that future. We have to look at that future and then step back. We call it retrocasting.
Okay.
So we'll envision with startups, big companies, the UN, we will envision a future for 2030. Characters, we use a lot of science fiction writers and illustrators.
Excellent.
We envision that future, and then, all right, if you believe that's going to exist in 2030, what happens to be in place in 2028, 2025? And we walk back, and it's a big step all the way back to tomorrow. So all of a sudden you're like, here's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Okay, and you can kind of see the future. So to give me your advice, that was your advice for startups. Now give me your advice for one of these legacy health system companies. What do they need to do?
Oh, they need to do this more than the startups. Startups can run a little faster, but it really does work. And I'll tell you why. For the large organizations, methodologies like this embed a component of storytelling that I
Okay.
think is lost in these large organizations. We hear about things about death by PowerPoint. You talk to anyone around here, they'll be like, oh yes, that's our organization. What we do is we'll use literally comic book writers and
wow.
illustrators. So I would give you a small comic book. You're the CEO of the company, and I'm trying to do innovation. I will give you that comic book and ask you to read that. Sit back, take your time. Who doesn't want to read a comic book
No.
first? Everyone, right? Everyone's growing up on them, and they're compelling. There's drama, there's characters.
Yeah.
You disagree, you agree. They're visually stimulating. And then when you're done, do you believe that could exist? If you do, then give me a little bit of time to make that happen.
Right.
And it's a very different conversation for if I came in and gave you
a PowerPoint.
48 slides with charts and graphs. You'd be thinking, why am I paying for this? This is going to be too expensive. It's going to take too long. You suspend disbelief when you're watching movies, reading a great book,
Yeah.
or a comic book. It's just even an easier way to do that. So companies are smart. They know that they need to do things. We just have to, as innovators, we need to get in there and get traction in certain ways. And we'll pull any rope that we can to get in there.
Excellent. Well, I love this design thinking approach and this storytelling approach to innovation because I agree with you. I think it really helps to bring things to life, bring the future to life. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Insights Lounge.
Great.
It was wonderful to hear about the way that Singularity University Labs is approaching this big challenge of bringing innovation broad scale and helping really disseminate it out into the marketplace. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm Jessica DeMassa at Singularity University's Exponential Medicine in the Guidewell Insights Lounge.